25 Best PS1 JRPGs. Number 25 Shadow Madness. Obviously, Graves' foundation and blueprint for Shadow Madness is Square's Final Fantasy VII. Just looking at how the game works in interface and gameplay, it is clear that the developer based its design on Square's RPG. So yes, Shadow Madness is enjoyable, but not right off the bat. You have to give it a few chapters to get to the good stuff. Number 24 Wild Arms 2. While a number of RPG players have fond memories of the original Wild Arms, they'll most likely be surprised and dismayed by its dinosaur of a sequel. While this doesn't bode well for Wild Arms 2, it is pleasing to note how far the genre has advanced since the original game's release. Number 23 SaGa Frontier. In all fairness, SaGa Frontier has a great story. It's a little vague at first, but when all the scenarios begin to knit themselves together, the game starts to get really good. If you like role-playing games, and you're just itching for another Square RPG, SaGa Frontier is probably a safe choice.
Like father, like son.
Number 22 Jade Cocoon, Story of the Tamamayu. The harsh truth behind Jade Cocoon's beautiful presentation is that there isn't a whole lot of game. Again, the game's fine mix of RPG components and monster combining elements make Jade Cocoon a game that is like no other. But hardcore players may feel a little ripped off after finding out the story mode takes about 15 hours to beat. Number 21 Breath of Fire 3. Even with its handful of new features, Breath of Fire 3 breaks little new ground. But for an RPG, the way in which everything in the game is arranged and executed shows an incredible amount of attention to detail and depth. Number 20 SaGa Frontier 2. SaGa Frontier 2 shows that it's never too late to fix things. Updating the series' traditional format with a lavish graphical style and 32-bit complexity, SaGa Frontier 2 will likely please RPG fans who are able to overlook the first title's looming shadow. Number 19 Guardians Crusade. If you fire up Guardians Crusade expecting an epic confrontation between the forces of good and evil, you are destined to come away disappointed. Approach the game without preconceptions and you're likely to be pleasantly surprised. Charming, sweet, and unpretentious, Guardians Crusade never pretends to be anything besides an enjoyable RPG. Number 18 RPG Maker. Having no false expectation as to the limitation of its toolset is an important thing when considering how satisfied you'll be with RPG Maker. Knowing off the bat that your experience with RPG Maker will frequently have your elbow deep in the most hostile of interfaces will most adequately prepare you for the rigors of RPG making. Number 17 The Legend of Dragoon. Perhaps The Legend of Dragoon, being a bit on the rare side, has kept the nostalgia more alive than it otherwise would have been. But in any case, if you're a fan of JRPGs, this is still well worth a play. The story especially does have its high points, though they come nearer to the end of the game than you might hope. Number 16. Legend of Legaia. Despite the flaws that keep Legaia from being the world beater that it could have been, it still remains an engaging RPG for anyone who likes to play RPGs. After having obtained all 3 characters, you'll find yourself entertained for hours upon hours. Overall, The Legend of Legaia is a worthwhile way to spend your time. Number 15. Wild Arms. Wild Arms is not without its problems. Still, the game's brilliant storyline, amazingly long playtime, and multitude of character options make it very easy to overlook the game's weak points. Every fan of RPG games should at least take a peek at this title. Number 14. Dragon Warrior VII. Dragon Warrior VII comes from one of the most popular series of video games in Japanese history, and it's a game that knows its target audience well. If you know you're in the market for a very lengthy and ultimately satisfying RPG and can get over the visuals, you owe it to yourself to give Dragon Warrior VII a try. Number 13. Suikoden II. Fans of the first Suikoden game will love the sequel. It improves on everything that had made the first game memorable. Suikoden II brings nothing new to the genre, but it executes well enough that no one will really care. Number 12. Breath of Fire 4. Breath of Fire 4 is as solid a game as any of its predecessors. Though it doesn't improve upon the standard RPG formula, it is hard to fault in any specific way. Nice presentation, an interesting storyline, satisfying RPG-style gameplay, and above-average visuals combine to make it a good game for RPG hardcore fans. Number 11. Suikoden. All in all, Suikoden is a fine, albeit short, RPG. Experienced role players should be able to whip through it in no time. Even novices shouldn't encounter too much trouble. It's got an appealing storyline and tons of characters to experiment with. Number 10. Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. Lunar 2 is a true classic, one of the finest RPGs ever produced. The high quality of its character-driven storyline is matched by few games. While this remake on PlayStation provides many enhancements upon the original game itself, such as the epilogue and plethora of anime scenes, it still suffers from some problems. Number 9. Valkyrie Profile. Valkyrie Profile Lenet is certainly unique in the world of RPGs. The only problem is that it takes a lot of passion and effort to appreciate what the game has to offer. But if you're looking for a different RPG experience and you don't mind a game that takes itself very seriously, you'll get your money's worth from Valkyrie Profile.
Prepare to be cleansed! Divine Assault!
Number 8. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment has its share of flaws, but if you can manage to get over those flaws, you'll find an RPG that dares to be different, but not at the sake of an interesting story and exciting gameplay. RPG fans looking for something other than standard formula should definitely give Persona 2 a shot. Number 7. Lunar Silver Star Story Complete. Lunar's Silver Star Story Complete is a must-buy for fans of the series, as well as an excellent introduction to this landmark RPG series. Lunar may not have modern aesthetics, but its gameplay and story are among the best of any RPG of any era. Number 6. Grandia. Translation aside, Sony has a real winner on its hand and it probably doesn't even know it. Grandia is every bit as worthwhile as Final Fantasy VIII, just in different ways. While more casual RPG fans might opt for Final Fantasy VIII, Grandia is a fantastic game for anyone looking for a light-hearted, truly satisfying adventure. Number 5. Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII combines a fantastic story, amazing visuals, and excellent sound with solid RPG gameplay. After a string of visually stunning but uninspired games from Square, many gamers fear that Final Fantasy VIII would be more of the same. Cast all fears aside, this title is one of the greatest games ever to bear the Final Fantasy name. Number 4. Xenogears. Xenogears' reliance on story, subtlety, and mood make it Square's most anime-like RPG, making the game one of its best. In conclusion, Xenogears is an excellent, thought-provoking RPG with enough story and original gameplay to warrant a look, even if the gameplay could use a little graphical polish. Number 3. Chrono Cross. Not to be too cliched, but Chrono Cross is a truly epic role-playing game experience that has cemented its place in the annals of RPG history. It is easily one of the best RPGs available on PlayStation. If you are a fan of role-playing games, then you must play Chrono Cross. Number 2. Final Fantasy VII. The question you must ask yourself is, are you prepared to dedicate a good portion of your time to take part in a powerful story unlike anything you have ever witnessed before? If your answer is yes, and you can approach Final Fantasy VII and you will find it be among the most incredible games you have ever played. Number 1. Final Fantasy IX. While some say the game is a combination of the previous Final Fantasy games, it is quite distinctive enough to carve out its own image. In short, FF9 is the culmination of Square in the PS1. In conclusion, there is no denying that FF9 is quite possibly the best traditional RPG on the PS1 generation. Play it now.